this is Tanja, and in today's video, I'm going to be preparing a budget. Coming off of last week's video where I spoke about my investing journey and where I started, I realized that there may be persons who are thinking to themselves that they can't actually start to save money or invest because their paycheck is way too small. So what I thought I'll do is that I'll prepare a budget. It will be for $2,500, which is pretty much a starting salary or almost a minimum wage salary. And I'm going to show you how you can allocate your monies into the different categories in 2024. This budget will be quite similar to what I was probably earning as a university graduate. And I'm just going to basically be updating for today's prices. At the end of the video, I will come back with a few ideas and thoughts and also a dose of reality check, because I know that there are persons who are going to be shocked that that amount of money actually doesn't get you a lot in 2024. And there are some persons who already know that that amount of money doesn't get you a lot in 2024. So I'll show you how you can make it happen, but of course, it's not going to be an easy task.
You can receive a copy of this $2,500 budget by logging on to livingloudonaBudget.com and signing up for the newsletter.
I've prepared this budget using the 50-30-20 method. If you are familiar with that method, it assumes that 50% of your income goes towards living expenses, 30% goes towards your wants, and 20% goes towards savings. Now, what I've done is I've adapted this method a little, and I'll go through it. The scenario that I've also used is that it's a single individual who's only responsible for themselves and their own bills. They're living on their own, or maybe they have a roommate and they don't have a car. They also don't have any student debt or medical debt or any other type of commercial debt. At the end, what I'll do is I'll give you a bit of scenarios that if that's not exactly your ideal situation, how you can adapt this to make it work for you. So basically from the budget, as I said, it was being $2,500 earnings, which is equivalent to $30,000 a year. And what I've also done is that I've used the actual column from the template to do a yearly total so that you can actually see per year how much it comes out to, because that actually does give you a brighter picture than just looking at it per month each time. So if we go through the major expenses, you'll see that the major expense is housing, which accounts for 42.5% of the total income. And that is pretty much what anyone who's earning this type of income but are having to pay, whether it's rent or even if they're paying a mortgage, this is pretty much what you would be looking at in terms of how much of your income is going towards that expense. The next biggest expense is groceries, and groceries accounts for 25% of your total income. And again, in 2024, that is pretty much reasonable for the size income that you would be earning if you were on this type. And rounding out, the top three expenses would be utilities, and including the cell phone, which comes in at 10% of the total income. Now, if you look through the different categories, I know that persons will be saying, oh, some of this doesn't actually look totally realistic. Like you'll be saying, oh, I'm paying more than $850 in rent, or there's no way that I can come in for $500 for groceries, or there's no way that, I can live with just these small categories. And that may be true based on your current situation, but based on your actually income, this is what your income is saying that you can afford. The next set of categories would be the sinking funds. And what I then decided to do was for the savings, which would be 20%, which works out to $500 per month, I divided that between sinking funds and savings. And the reality of it is that there are things like the sinking funds will have things like your birthdays, Christmas, any deposits that you want to make. Because if you're currently living like this and you don't actually have a car, you may want to have a car, but it's best to actually save something for a deposit or save something for the insurance, etc., before you embark on that. So I've made certain that I've provided something that you have to actually work towards or that you can use as savings to work towards. So that category, in terms of the sinking funds, and you can determine how you want to move these sinking funds, whether or not you want to move the birthday one to travel, or whether or not you want to move that one to some other category that works best for you. But that accounts for 7.6% of your income. And the last category, which is a savings category, and this category basically is going to determine your long-term future. The thing is that if you're actually living paycheck to paycheck, you don't actually have any amounts to put into this category, because this category is like $310 per month. And for an individual who has, let's say, student loans, that is pretty much where that is going. Or for an individual who has this paycheck with these expenses, but you also have a car, that may be where your expenses, your extra funds is actually going. However, without putting aside in this particular category, what you're doing is limiting your options for your future. And I'll tell you why I speak a lot about this particular category and about this particular highlight that I'm going to share right now. Now, instead of retirement, I've crossed that out and I've placed personal development there, which accounts for $125 per month, $1,500 for the year, and it works out at 5% of your income. Throughout my career, from the time I started working, I've allocated 5% towards personal development. In years when I was doing ACCA, that is what it would go towards. And I know that the ACCA students were saying there's no way you can do ACCA for that amount of money, but I did. And the way I did it is that I didn't go to any school until I got to the final end. I didn't go to any revision classes or anything like that. I basically just bought the books and I taught myself to my final three. And that was the way I was able to do it, coming out of it, paying for it out of my pocket, but also making certain that when I finished it, I, one, didn't have any debt attached to it, but I also, because I paid it out of my pocket, I didn't have to give back any employer time. I was free to move on. So that 5%, I think, is where you really need to make certain that you are allocating something there, because that 5% is going to determine how you're going to be able to best increase your paycheck. And if you're saying, or you're thinking to yourself, like, this budget is very basic, I don't want to live on this budget doesn't actually let me live, I'm basically existing, then you're going to need to increase your income. Whether you start a side hustle, whether or not you start a business, or whether or not you move up in whatever career you are in. But the answer is that you're going to have to find ways to increase your income. And the only way you're going to do that is through personal development, which means that you need to allocate the funds to do that. If you are on this salary and you're saying, I'm quite fine living like this, then you can see from this how you can best allocate into the particular categories that work for you. Maybe Christmas is not something you're big on. Maybe you don't have a car. Maybe you don't want to get a car. Maybe you live at home. And there are persons who may want to do all the things, but they're currently living at home. And if that is the situation, and you can save, or you're currently saving a portion of what I have allocated in this for rent, then that's going to be the key to your upward mobility. So this is just a starting point. It is a reality check, because it does show you that even on $2,500 in 2024, you can be, or most likely, living paycheck to paycheck. And it is not necessarily a life that you may want to live. Like, there are really no treats in between this budget. There's nothing fancy in between this budget. There's not even an allocation for eating out in this budget, which means they will have to come from your grocery budget, which is already very difficult. It is about making certain that you've allocated every dollar to a particular expense or to a particular savings or investment category. And then from there, you can move it, which is where the authentic living comes in. You move it to what works best for you. At the end of the day, only you know what works best for you. And it's up to you to make certain that the monies that you do receive, that you're allocating it in a way that works for you. There are a few things that you can do in terms of to cut some of these expenses, but the truth is that these expenses or most of these expenses are already at the basic level. You know, I talk a lot about maybe saving, but at the end of the day, there is an element of where I, for myself, and I'm sure for other persons out there, will decide that there's a point in time where you are reducing the quality of life, which is why you will see I also do have a portion in here for medical insurance, because I believe that regardless of what your income is, that you should have something allocated for medical insurance, because at the end of the day, health is